4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode, I believe, 31 of the Art of Move podcast. We are joined again today by Adrian Veinot. My name is Anthony Manuel. I'm here with Dr. William Raybar. And today we got Adrian back on the podcast. If you haven't heard the first episode with Adrian, I highly recommend you go back. He talked quite a bit about his journey in fitness as a whole, working as a model cover bodybuilder and, 2 decades in the fitness industry as a personal trainer, trying every method and every movement practice that he could get his hands on, get his mind around, and talked about not only a lot of the physical transformations that he went through on his journey, but also some of the, I'm almost going to say spiritual transformation, some of the expressions of personality and some of the shifts in mindset and perspective that going through this journey of, from being like a really jacked up bodybuilder to someone who is trying to be at peace with his own movement and have some fluidity to his experience within his body. Go back and listen to the first episode if you have not listened. Don't jump right into this. Well, you could jump into this one. Do whatever you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But I'm really, really excited because we actually had some viewers from the last episode send in some really cool questions that I wanted to kind of cover. We're also going to dive a little bit into the idea of the psyche and how we can be conditioned a little bit within gym culture to pursue certain goals that aren't necessarily equated to health, and why we have some of the more superficial goals that people have a tendency to chase after. But let's just, let's keep it casual first. How are you guys doing?
I'm having a fantastic day. I'm happy to be here.
Nice.
Having an awesome day. Had some technical issues coming on, but I'm ready to roll.
Can you just move your mic a little closer, Will?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just crank up your volume just a little bit. What'd you guys do for movement today so far? I know you just did a go to workout yourself.
Yeah, and right immediately following this, I'm heading down to the Good Life Barrington gym with a lifting buddy I've worked out with for the last 20 years. So we're probably gonna do some curls in the squat rack.
Nice. That was the first gym that I was actually a personal trainer in. Was before it was the Barrington location, it was the Scotia Square location. That was the first place I ever worked as a personal trainer.
That's exactly why I figured I'd mention
it. And then, Will, did you get some movement in today, or have you been working?
Not that much. I was working bow and corner when I work. Being with patients, being in that position, I'm on top of them. I can and yeah, I did a little bit of rope flow between patients. I had 5 minutes and just snuck in some underhand sneaks.
Nice. And Will, your mic is still super, super low. I don't know if your settings are on a different mic or if it's just a distance thing, but sure, we'll just. Okay, cool. Okay, we'll double check there. I did a little bit of a morning flow myself and have been trying to keep the movement going. I've been doing a lot of computer work, but I find even when I'm doing computer work, I can keep the spine a little bit fluid and moving. Adrian, I just want to say, hey, what's that?
I watched your morning flow. I saw it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. A
lot of volume. Asked me, that's a big work.
Pardon me. Sorry.
A lot of work, a lot of volume. Good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that wasn't something that, I dove into. I was doing like some 50 rep, 100 rep stuff, but that's been, I've been building up to that probably over 3-4 months of doing that. I started probably at around 15 reps per side, and I would do a couple rounds of that, and then just gradually building up the volume, getting into those bows and corners, and for me, a lot of the quote training that I'm doing now is mostly just like movement maintenance stuff, and then I try to move as much as I can throughout the day. That's we talked a little bit about the shift between doing these, like, you work out for an hour and then you don't do anything the rest of the day, versus maybe you have some dedicated sessions, you're spending like 15, 20, 30, maybe even like a couple hours on movement mechanic maintenance and getting the gears moving in your body. And then you shift out into kind of throughout the day, you're throwing in a little practice here. I would throw in a couple bear crawls or some rope work, or, just put on a song and start dancing, just move throughout the day. It's a totally different paradigm.
Oh yeah. I do a similar thing in between clients. I'll do it just to keep up the energy.
Nice. It's funny. How's your mic now, Will?
How does it sound?
It's still really, really quiet. If you just open up your settings, what's your mic set to?
My mic is set to, yeah, it's the default mic, the one I have right now here. How's that? Is that a little better?
Is there a gain knob on your microphone? And sorry, guys, for the technical issues. We will
How's that?
We'll figure this all out. Keep cranking it up. Keep testing. Check.
How's that? Test.
Keep higher. Higher. Just crank it.
I'm cranked.
Yeah, that's max volume.
That's max.
That's strange.
Yeah.
And there's no other mic options for you on your settings?
No.
That's the only one, hey? Really weird.
Let's try this one right here. How's that? Is that better?
It's still really quiet for me. Can you hear him, Adrian?
Yeah, but it is quiet. But I can hear him perfect.
I'm going to restart my computer. I'll be back in 10.
All right. Yeah. We'll get back into it.
Yeah.
We'll see in a minute here. So just while Will's doing that, Adrian, we had some viewers, like I said, they reached out and were asking specific questions. They listened to the first one, and I'd love for Will to be a part of some of these conversations, but I'll ask the questions that were specific to you. When on the last episode, you mentioned that you had attended all these different certification programs, you learned these different things, you went to seminars, but you never hired your own coach. And I'm kind of the same way. I was always resistant to hiring a coach because I'm like, I can just figure it out. And I know my body better than other people know my body, and I can just figure it out. But something in you was inspired to hire Eric Flow Ops, like the go-to coach Eric. And as a coach, getting coached yourself, this person was asking, what was your experience getting coached by someone else, especially for the first time? And how was that, like, what stood out to you in that experience?
It's something that just recently I've been able to do that I haven't been able to do my entire life, which I would summarize in like one word: surrender. And I'm a known control freak. I like to control the situations. And I mean, like, I'm not in a negative sense. I'm not like, you can't leave the house. But at the same point in time, I like to, control the situation, control the scenario, be actively doing something towards a solution rather than sitting back and whining. So I love solving my own problems. And in most of my life experiences, I've solved my own problems. And I don't know. I was like browsing Instagram, and I watch and I watch and I watch, and I saw the way he moved. His marketing spoke to someone like me, but it was particularly just little things, little attentions to detail, where I could see him stand out from a large amount of the rest, and it just resonated with me. It was like, okay, so here's someone that like takes it very serious, who is very passionate about it, who never wants to stop learning. Like, there's no absolute with this individual. Like, and someone that when I started to actually speak to him, it was very one-to-one. We're very good friends now, I would say. Like we can chat. Like we chatted yesterday 2 hours. And the whole time we're not exercising, we're kind of shooting the shit because both of us work with completely different individuals. But realistically, the man has a very good eye, and he also very much understands how to communicate to me what needs to be done. Is he going to be that way for everybody? Most of us aren't that way for everybody, but I would say for the vast majority, he's going to find a way to communicate it to you so you're able to get it done. He's also very professional, so there's no sugarcoating, there's no lip service. I'm not looking for anything like that. I'm looking for advice on how to like climb over or work around obstacles, do what needs to be done. And like I can collab with him now on what needs to go. I can explain how I'm feeling, and he'll be able to go, okay, here. So like, I mean, sometimes lately I haven't shared a lot of my go-to practice on the internet. I've been kind of just keeping it to myself. And realistically, it's not as flashy and as impressive as what you might actually see out there, but it's very specific to me. And if you knew what I was trying to achieve or what I was trying to improve upon, like really just working the lower limb to ankle gyroscope, if you have those go-to-coach eyes, you'll see it. But for most of my audience, they're probably not actually going to notice it. However, like I will send the video to Eric and be like, yo, check this out. Like, how is this? And be like, ooh, okay, really good, little wide on the right bow, very honest. Pull it back in. Or, left inside ankle bone could be a little bit higher, like especially on your release. Okay, cool. And those minute details, they really stood out. Because, with Eric, and I'm very similar this way in my training. It's probably like why I like training with him, is he's very much about regressions. I learned very on as a trainer, progressions are very easy to develop. That's the internet right now. Like, ooh, what's that dude who makes the people do it with the trap bar, offset, Steedman? That's to me, that's a laugh. That's almost a negligent like circus trick of sorts. But and the claims that come with it are even more extreme. But that's a whole other podcast. But when I see that, or I see a trainer go 5 more, 5 more burpees, whoop-de-doo. Let's do an exercise for 10 minutes and drill it and drill it and drill it and drill it. And it's a different kind of technique and perfection, intention over intensity. And you hear these kind of buzzwords coming out of everybody's mouth, but it's not in their practice. I know, I watch this. You guys are watching it too. You little movement freaks like me. You know what I'm talking about. People like, you'll see the little Instagram post and it'll talk about intention. It ain't there. Or it doesn't follow through. And in a lot of cases, if you can do a regression and take someone back, peel back layers, you're going to get a lot closer to the actual cause, the root of what's going on, than just trying to go, okay, well, here's the classic thing. Person had their knee operated on, they had a total knee reconstruction. Here's the classic protocol that, is like from 1990, so even older than that. No one's really changed it. Or put some silica bags on it too. We'll get them to go do some range of motion stuff, but nothing creative outside the box. And with that almost comes like a really stagnant mindset too, like just stagnant training. Just going through the motions. And why would you want to go through the motions when you could really be present in the motion? Really, really present in that moment, and then get that awareness, that deeper feeling. And that's something, yesterday's session with Eric, 2 hours of, we were working on my deep resting squat. And most people would probably go, what's going on? But I'm leaking off the forehead, because I'm working so hard to take it further. And that's just a regression on something that I already know how to do. But, our body makes all these little, call them dysfunctions, call them intelligent adaptations. We take all these shortcuts that we don't even notice, and it's not efficient. It feels efficient in the moment, but it's not. It comes with a price. And now we work on the regressions, and that really makes a big difference. Like just keeping the ribs down, that's a big argument right now. But the diaphragm plays a very big role with that spine, and a bit too much of that curve, in my opinion, is a little detrimental. Like Instagram back chain versus true functional back chain, they look different. One of them is exaggerated for the gram, and the other one it's not as impressive, but it's better, in my opinion.
Low back curve specifically there, or what are you talking about?
Yeah,
mechanically there.
Talking about you'll see a bit too much of you'll still see the back chain pelvis, but you will see a bit too much of a curve, like a J curve, like an arch through the low back that sometimes will come with a bit of thoracic compensation, a bit of flare. And you guys have probably, if you follow Eric, you've probably seen he'll put up the GOTA spine, the WOTA spine side by side. And if you take a good look at that GOTA spine, there's not that much arch down there in that low back. It's not as exaggerated. And if too much arch is going to be compression, right? Well, too much yin, not enough yang, compression. Not that I'm a neutral shoulder blade freak. I do believe there should be a little bit of back emphasis. But I find with the gram, guys and gals are going a little bit, just like anything else with the gram, a little bit too aggressive. Remember when a stability ball was just a physio tool, and next thing you know, dudes were jumping them?
Yes. I was one of those dudes for sure. Well, with the extension of the lumbar spine, you're banging your joints together. No matter what, mechanically, that's what you're doing to gain stability. However, your muscles do engage as well, right? So the argument really is banging the joints to get stability okay, right? And at high speeds, they're going to wear out. When people come in pain, it's the most common thing I see at the office by far is inflammation in the joints and the low back. And that will be one of the major causes. When you overextend, and of course being front chain dominant, right? So either one can bring that inflammation because you're hitting the joints mechanically together. So I think there is a little bit more of a neutral there, but I'd love to hear counter arguments on that.
Yeah, well,
From my own personal experience, I was just exaggerating. I was trying to get a little too back chain, and I regressed off it a little bit to keep the ribs down. And now breath is deeper, core stability is better, and the back chain is, it's less about doing the exercise. It's more about being in back chain for me all the time. And that's the big difference. There's no low back cramping, no compression like you're talking about, because I'm just floating around. Then I absorb the ground better.
Specifically there, if you're talking about an anterior tilt and the pelvis is coming up, the joints are banging together, you can posterior tilt. That will take some of the tension out, then push your butt farther back, and then get the tension, retension back into the glutes, breathe into that, and you're long and strong, versus just putting it in the joints with a massive anterior tilt.
Like we've taken a little bit of time to sort of discern between getting into the back chain by creating pelvic tilt versus, you know, being able to move your pelvis back and forth in space, or tilt your chest even forward slightly without without changing the curvature of your spine too much. And that is a big question. Like, remember Bam recently had a thing where it was like, well, there's no such thing as anterior or posterior pelvic tilt. It's like, yeah, there kind of is, dude. Like, it's sort of a thing. Like, you can still have your lumbar spine jammed up in the back chain pretty hard. If you're overextending your lumbar spine, you're still going to jam the joints together, and that's still going to create an issue, right? There were a few things that you said. What I heard was the experience that you had as a coach getting coached was you had this person with specialized knowledge who had an eye for things that you just wouldn't be able to see you doing yourself. Even if you filmed yourself doing it, you probably wouldn't catch these things yourself. So having someone who can shoot straight with you, who also acknowledges as a coach, who has this technical understanding, who's looking for improvement, he can just speak straight to you and be like, hey, look, like this is what I'm seeing. Fix it, right? And that's obviously pretty valuable. And one of the things you said that stood out to me, and I wanted to talk all three of us about this today, was, one of you're keeping your practice to yourself right now, which makes a ton of sense, by the way. I'm not all about sharing everything that you do on social media. Yes, I did just post a 20-minute workout that I did this morning, but that was someone asked me to do that, so I did. You said that some of these movements, especially because they're so hyper tailored to you, they aren't as flashy or as sexy, so to speak, when you're doing them. And I remember for me, when I first saw Goda, I was like, what the hell are these dudes doing? They're like leaning against the wall. They're fucking like rocking in some like crazy yoga pose. Like, what the hell is that even going to do? You just have no idea. And it actually, the whole team recently went out, like the founders of Goda recently went out to be on Mark Bell's podcast. And when they released the video of Mark Bell doing the Goda workout, a lot of the comments were like, there's no way this works. This is ridiculous. Like, they're watching Mark be like, holy crap, I can't believe this works so well. I feel this so intensely. But like the comments are like, this is ridiculous. By looking at it, it doesn't look as flashy as, say, lifting 500 pounds off the ground in a deadlift, or like doing a crazy Olympic lift, or some, sort of insane calisthenic move, or something that's hard. You're not drenched in sweat from doing a CrossFit workout. There's none of that. It's funny because Goda is creating its own community where you're showing off your pose in your corners, and you're showing how back chain dominant you are, and you're creating almost like this like community specific social proof. But I wanted to talk about this idea of gym culture creating this status oriented thing where your fitness and your training is associated with your like how you present yourself in the world. And I know like bodybuilding is an extreme example of that. I did a lot of, heavy lifting, and I would, pose a lot of shirtless selfies when I was trying to get ripped and stuff. Like, and I wanted to kind of investigate your experience behind that. Cause, in the last episode you said, I can count on, one hand how many bodybuilding workouts that I've done, or two hands on how many bodybuilding workouts I've done since the pandemic started. And you sort of lost interest in that sort of like proving yourself to others through fitness mentality. What sort of shifted for you when you got into your movement practice that some of that culture became less appealing to you?
Compliments like you look happy and you look healthy really feel good. And they hit you in a completely different way than, bro, you look swole or you look sexy. And it just, it'll touch you in a different way and you start getting that. And when people say, wow, you look healthy or you look happy, like, I want to try that. I'm inspired. I'm curious. That one motivates me a lot more. I enjoy going back into the gyms now. I've been reemerging, and I enjoy showing exercises or showcasing a new physique or a different way of doing things. I can see people actively interested. I like you hear guys that they're trying right now. They're younger. They're in their 20s. I know these dudes so well. They got the weight vest. They got the gas, the belt, the water jug. I know them, and they're looking at me going, "What in the fuck?" And but they're interested, I might have looked at that a bit different too back, but I'm not doing a lot of goat exercise. Most I might do is just, my curls are hit from the back chain. My shoulder presses are hit from the back chain. It's going to look different. Then people start looking at it and go, yeah, man, shit, I would not want that guy running at me. And I wouldn't want to run at that guy. They can put it together real quick. But to look like you're moving more with ease, you're like, I'm enjoying my workouts. There's a grind, but I'm feeling great when I get up in between sets. I move around. I can pop down, hit a deep squat, get my water bottle, take a drink, do whatever I want. That kind of freedom, I think some of those guys that I identify with, some of the lifters, they look at that and they're like, okay. Then you might see an ollie lifter or somebody over attempting a squat, looking at me moving that way, going, there's got to be something to that. There's, you can see like the arguments going on in their own head. They're like, no, or like occasionally I'll show my quads on Instagram. Now, admittedly, I got years of bodybuilding behind those quads, but I'll be doing like a bow corner release, and people are just going, what in the fuck? How is that possible? And it's like, it makes you rethink a lot of what you think might actually be possible and how you might want to train. But look at how, that guy walks away from his workout. I'm pumped. I got a good swell on, but at the same point in time, I'm walking out ready to perform. I'm not walking out ready to recover and get a protein shake. That's the last thing on my mind. I actually, normally after most workouts, I go for a walk. I like walking, the feeling of integrating after a workout, just feeling everything start clicking together. And that's my metric for my improvement. And then next thing you know, I'm doing like a walking meditation. It could be like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm just out taking in the surroundings, walking, feeling good. And I know the next morning I'm going to wake up feeling better. And when I used to train, I don't know if I can train that body part, man. It's been a few days. I'm really sore. I know what that is. So I think a lot of times I like trying to have people look at it a bit differently. Imagine if I was to go in a stringer and start doing goat, it really look different. But it would, it gets some people thinking. And also like yoga people have been coming up to me now. They've started, ask questions. I might be out in the park, or I'm down in the water, or I'm in the gym. People are like, hey man, I saw that. What was that? I can think of a particular dude actually who's a very good yoga, really cool dude, Spencer, on Instagram, tetratonic yogi. And I mean, the guy is real talented. He even took up Gota after just kind of watching somebody like myself and others and going, there's got to be something to that. And then next thing you know, guy gets into the mace, and then a lot of people are having a lot of fun moving their bodies around a lot of different ways on their own journey. Because, I mean, his obstacles are probably different than mine. But at the end, I think he's still searching for that avatar state, that great feeling. And I like now working with younger men to help them still be able to build the bodies that or women, but generally a lot of bros hire me. I like working with them to help them build their body the way they want, but almost as if I could have fixed so many of the problems that I had. Like don't go there, young man, don't go there. Like just so much more wisdom that I can put on, be like, I have a young client right now, he's away at school. He'll send me videos of his squat and I'll be like, look at that right ankle. And the guy will go, he'd do what he's told, fix it up, send me back a video, fix that right ankle. That's a guy who's going to play hockey a lot longer, because we paid attention to that. I could have easily said, you could slap 10 pounds on that bar, bro, do 2 more reps. That is easy. That's I don't think you need to go to a certification to know how to do that. But to maybe break down the analysis of something and go, okay, like we're going to focus on your ankle because that's about all you're going to be able to digest today. But I'm also going to see all these other things. And I'm be like, remember that injury on your right shoulder? Wonder if that has anything to, oh, I bet it does. And, start putting it together. And next thing you know, like you're doing a better job of putting the Humpty Dumpty back and you're stopping a lot of cracks. And it's very fun because I had those cracks. And it's like, this dude is going to be better than me. And I'm happy to see that.
Mm.
Oh, I absolutely wish I started GOTA and a movement practice like this where it builds upon itself. Like you mentioned, I can do my practice just like you, and I will move better afterwards. I want to go for a run. I want to do things outside. I want to express my movement that I just encoded into my body versus exhausting myself in a fitness sense and reps and sets and bringing your central nervous system to a heightened state and then having to rest afterwards to recover. It's a completely different paradigm. And another thing you mentioned with yoga, I think it's a perfect segue into GOTA. You already have the ranges of motion, but you're missing a little bit in general. You're missing a little bit of the strength in the end ranges and in the elasticity of your fibers, right? So if you start doing GOTA, you can encode that back in within the mathematical pattern. And I think it's a great segue. Plus, they look aesthetically pleasing. Like GOTA and those angles when you're hitting the bow, you put your foot behind you. It's just like, I look down, I'm like, this is beautiful. It's symmetrical angles. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, but now I can see the symmetry just looking at somebody. And, when someone's doing an inside ankle bone high, 22.5 out with the knees in a squat or in a, like a bow against the wall, it actually looks great. Okay, so I think the aesthetic actually increases as you get into these patterns.
Yoga is interesting too because it teaches
the aesthetic is amazing.
Yeah. Yoga teaches you this proprioceptive awareness where you kind of become aware of your joint angles, but it sort of lacks some of the back chain dominant behavior a lot of times. I mean, and you've talked in previous episodes about treating yogis and some of their hyperlaxity in some of their joints and stuff. I feel probably one of the things that yoga is criticized for in some functional fitness circles is creating a very flaccid lumbar region. And so having this back chain dominant behavior reintroduced and adding some of that into a yoga practice would probably create a lot more body awareness, a lot of return on investment for, and when because you're dealing with joint angle stacking, yoga I did yoga, by the way, for like 2 years with nothing else. I was on a pretty intense journey myself. I did a lot of Ashtanga yoga, a lot of Vinyasa yoga, and studied the Yoga Sutras really, really intensely. And I was more aware of what was happening in my body and in my joint angles than I ever was. And, now applying that sort of that inner awareness to, these integrated movement practices like GOTA, it's easy to find the joint angles and it's easy to just make those, when you're talking about those micro adjustments that Eric wants to make for you, it's like I'll adjust like the shift of my pelvis a little bit, or I'll scoot it back and I'll find those places where it can load and I can make those small adjustments. Will, you talked about FRC being really good at teaching that when you're focusing on the little articulation of individual joints. It's a really good practice to have that awareness. Just adding back in that back chain dominant behavior for yogis is going to have a huge return on investment. It's funny too, because you were talking about talking to these younger generations and being like, yeah, I really want these guys to do better than I was. I think all of us, all three of us are probably like, yeah, fuck, I wish I was doing GOTA like 10 years ago. One of the other questions that one of our viewers asked was, what are some things you wish you could go back and tell your 20 and also 30-year-old self?
To probably to learn how to flow more, to learn how to surrender more, and to learn how to manage my emotions so that I could have those energy chakras flow together rather than get bound up and carry so much restricted energy, so much weight on my shoulders internally for so long. To learn how to kind of detach, but mainly, yeah, I think like if I could go back to 20 or 30. Either time, I didn't really know how to do this as well. I used to meet everything with fight. Have a bad day, lift it off. Bad relationship thing, go break, get better. You know, like I think I said in the last podcast, it's like almost cliche that amazing bodies are built in breakup, you know, and with heartbreak and just to learn how to focus on building more than external type qualities and focus a little more on the things that were actually probably bothering me. That's probably what I would focus on doing. And basically that all comes back to learning how to release energy. I just held so much tension for so long that I don't even feel like the same person in a lot of ways, especially through my hands, arms, and neck. I think I used to crack my neck every day, multiple times a day. And there's something wrong with that. Like, you know, like you're going to catch all different opinions on what cracking is. But like, shit, if you got to do that many times a day, there's something wrong with that. If you always want someone to push on your T-spine to kind of just give you that release, what the fuck are you doing to yourself, you know? And are you really stronger? Like my delusion of what stronger was, you know, and I think it's a process a lot of people go through in their own way, some longer, some shorter. But I would definitely tell myself to learn how to surrender a bit more, trust the process, and not always have to fight.
It's interesting that you say that with strength, because right now when I say strength, I say fitness. Those words mean different to me than it did when I was in my 20s, right? So strength to me now is being able to apply it internally and to be able to flow energy through my body and use my body where I want it. Where strength for me before was a linear push of external weight, an external variable, a number to get to, and that would make me strong. Where now I make my strength from within, and I can create it at any point if I have that, right? So it's from within versus from without.
Another thing that I would tell myself, and I think there might be a lot of this one might trigger some gym bros, gym folks. So just as a heads up, I think there's a fallacy out there that battle ropes and box jumps and stuff like that are because you once played football or something that you're an athlete. If you're probably doing sumo deads and you've put on a lot of mass, or let's say you've hit the sauce, there is not there's this misunderstanding that the muscle you put on knows the technique. There's like, I mean, you kind of think about bodybuilders and the way we kind of walk. Well, like you can see a person decode themselves out of great movement with that kind of training, or, you know, a lot of strength training for that matter. And they think, well, I'll just add muscle. Muscle equals performance. You know, there's that quantitative number on the bar. I moved more weight, or, you know, I snatched more, and it must mean performance. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe at that lift, but not probably at life, or not probably at a sport. Like, that's where some people get really hurt, myself included, is I was a great sprinter as a young man, sailor. I did breakdancing, gymnastics, like I did a lot of stuff with my body. But then I got into, I remember this is a throwback to anyone who's my age. I remember snapping into my first animal pack with 19 Norandra. And, I snap into that pack. And that was back in the days of like, Anno explode, make your bumhole explode. Like before Jacked, like way back. And I took that stuff and, I go to the gym and I do my exercises and I thought I'd go home and I thought I was an athlete. And I never really clued in that like I was having a harder time with stairs. My box jumps probably sucked compared to what they used to be. My sprint was terrible to the point that my girlfriends would laugh at me if I had to run. But yet in my head, I thought I'm stronger. I'm an athlete. And I think if I could go back, I'd tell yourself strength and size does not mean technique. I mean, shit, it was right there, Bruce Lee, in front of my face the whole time. But, I think actually, I think the Functional Podcast, Nadi, I think actually put out something very similar to this, maybe in the last 24 hours, where, like that extra muscle that we build doesn't necessarily translate over to performance.
Yeah, it's fun. I'll read. He says, when a strength coach tells you to pack on useless muscle as a way to improve athleticism, they're breaking a cardinal sin recording the said principle. And the said principle is specific adaptations to impose demands. Our muscles evolved via the mastery of technique. High-level athletes have a look to them almost every time. It's because their muscles developed in relationship to their immaculate technique. There's a reason bodybuilders aren't world class sprinters. It's not about the size of the muscle. It's about the programming and viscoelastic properties. So again, it's this idea that, I was listening to a great interview with Tom Myers where he talks about you can tell what a person does. Like you can look at a swimmer and say that's a swimmer. CrossFitters have a very, very specific look. They have the developed traps, the overdeveloped, probably like, internally rotated like lats and overdeveloped delts from doing so much pressing and Olympic lifting at a high volume. Bodybuilders have a certain look, runners have a certain look, sprinters have a certain look. The demands that you put on it's really interesting too to see more and more GOATA athletes, because you're like I don't know about you guys, but I'm noticing the quote look of a lot of people who practice a lot of GOATA or who have been in the GOATA game for quite a while. And it's interesting because I'm not seeing a specific physique adaptation, because GOATA is this interesting movement practice that can be adapted to so many different styles of training. You can do a lot of sprinting. You can do a lot of loaded sled pushes. You can do some of the like calisthenic stuff. You can do a lot of the high volume body weight stuff. But there's definitely there's not like a definitive physique that I've noticed in a lot of GOATA athletes, because the practices can be so diverse and so many different people from different backgrounds are adopting it. But you can really tell what a person does based on their physique, because your structure will adapt to specialize in types of movement. Like when you were talking about how strength, lifting heavy weights and doing box jumps and ropes, like that was me. Like I was really good at squatting a barbell on my back and jumping onto a really high box. Get me to run, get me to like cut, get me to dance. Like I was a block, I was like, I was a robot. But fuck, could I ever squat and jump? Like I could jump straight up in the air and I could squat straight up in the air. But that was about it.
I do think there is a physique with GOATA, but it's more angles of your joints, right? Like that's what we're going for. It's less of an actual like blown out look, right? So I think over time, GOATA athletes will start looking like each other, but it'll be more of a long-term structure than a short-term structure. And yeah, that was a good point that you made about the running, because I found the same thing. I used to love running as a kid. As soon as I got into bodybuilding, that kind of ended. I got worse at sports. I was in soccer, and my coaches were like, "Man, you look great. You packed on all this muscle," and I did look better, but I was losing a step, right? So I didn't exactly know why it didn't correlate, but it didn't. And I was getting slower, and I didn't know why. Less working, like if I took that time and worked on my athletic activity, had something like GOATA, it would have been a different level. So there's sacrifices to be made with what you do in the gym. And if you're focusing on building muscle and lifting weights, you're going to get good at that. You're not going to get good at movement. So that's really the difference there.
A movie that definitely impacted me that comes to mind, where I can think of that's exact thing. Where have either of you ever seen the movie The Program? It's a football movie.
Yeah. No.
There's a dude in it, like iconic, Latimer. And Latimer's in doing clean and press, and he's clearly, he's testosterone, no problem, right in the arm. And Latimer puts on like 20, 30 pounds in the off season. He's a beast, and he dominates football. So obviously, I remember seeing that as a young man. I'm going, well, that's clearly the secret, Cleans and presses the weight room, and I'm just going to dominate sports. And it was every year I think I got worse at sports. I really probably looked the role, I probably showed up and got the intimidation factor out in a lot of things, but like in a sport like soccer, I just sucked exponentially every single year. It got harder for me to play and less enjoyable as well. So I stopped doing a lot of those things I enjoyed. And then you catch the athlete who moves into bodybuilding, and this is a questionable one, that calls himself a bodybuilder athlete, who then thinks they're athletic as a weightlifter bodybuilder. And that one's an argument that it's probably going to be a tale as old as time, but it's not the same world in my opinion. And I think if you had been an athlete beforehand and you decode yourself like that, it's hard to admit that, like, hey, I'm stronger, but I'm not exactly the athlete I used to be. I think a lot of people who play field sports, if they really thought about it, they go, shit, he's right.
Yeah, I think that you're completely right. It's two different things entirely. One is putting on muscle, putting on an engine. If you're a car, you're putting on a giant engine, but not working on the suspension, not working to make everything integrate, to be able to be more like a rally car that's super fast versus a stock car that's just going straight, right? So you really have to look at things mechanically versus just externally lifting weights, right? And that's really the mind shift there, because people are on autopilot, I think, with their default assumption that fitness and getting healthier requires weights and requires strength to be able to have those external variables met, when it really comes down to mechanics and how to work it in the right angles, I should say.
Speaking to the GOTA body, I know like at different systems you can kind of see different things going through, like systems with like whether it's floating shoulders or lat spreads. I mean, you guys probably know what systems I'm referring to right there. You can kind of go, okay, I know what I'm looking at. With GOTA, my prediction would be you will see male and female with legs that look like a centaur or a satyr. You're like a fucking Lipizan or stallion in some cases, where the more GOTA sprinter is going to look like literally like a show horse. Like you're going to see haunches with a lot of detail. And because there's so much leg work in GOTA, I would argue that there probably will be higher testosterone levels naturally. So with a lot of men specifically, you're going to see a very shredded hamstring glute. And it's going to stand out from what a lot of traditional gym people work on, because with GOTA, like, what are we focusing on? A lot of those glutes, those hammies, those calves, those are forgotten body parts in the gym. So a lot of times, like I remember when I started doing some bodybuilding poses, but up on my toes, inside ankle bone high, people comment and they're like, shit, man, legs. And it's just because, we're focused on, like, I do my practice twice a day, almost every day. Now, like, I'm actually in a 3 times a day every day sort of thing. And that kind of volume, that adds up. And, you keep your diet in check. You can't deny that that guy or that girl is going to have some serious hamstrings. And if they get lean enough, you're going to see those glutes popping through. And they're going to stay full. GOTA glutes stay full all the time. Yeah, like, I don't think there is a better way to build that upper ass.
It's my glute development is, like, insane right now. Go ahead, Will. Sorry.
To a point that you were saying, in the office, when I work on certain athletes, like a bodybuilder or, a CrossFitter, sometimes I'll poke into the muscle and it'll feel like a sponge, like it's almost not there. It's blown out. And then you get to the actual muscle underneath, right? So I predict that if I worked with a GOTA athlete, it would be more like a boxer, where it's like all muscle, all working for you, and not just that, water blown out look that isn't going to help you move. It's just there for, aesthetics at the end of the day.
Yeah, like, so it's the myofibrillar hypertrophy as opposed to the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. It's not just pumped up full of goo.
It's a very hard granite look versus, the pump. And I guess, like, Kat Eric says this, we don't real flex muscles so much in GOTA, we more like load and release energy, so to speak. So sometimes I'll admittedly put a thing up on Instagram where I might flex just a little more than the average GOTA person would, because, well, I might know how to do that just to make it look a little more flashy. Like, oh man, the lighting here is sweet, my quads are looking saucy. I'll just make sure I turn on my rec fem just a bit more than I would for the exercise. Now, a mover probably is going to look at that, and they're going to, if they have a bodybuilding background, they're going to go, this fucking dude is just showing off. But if they don't, they're going to go, wow, that's really impressive. And that's half the point sometimes, is to put a little razzle-dazzle on something to get some interest, like.
There was a photo of you, I think it was on Instagram. It's not the one that Anthony used, but you were doing a GOTA pose with your arms stretched out, just reaching to both ends. And it looked very aesthetically pleasing. And I never even thought of doing that, right? So it's like, when I looked at that, I'm like, oh, he's adding his own spice to GOTA. He's adding his own flavor.
Well, I got to credit that. Like, that's actually that's fully inspired by BAM. Fully. Oh, yeah. I remember seeing BAM put, like, he put a, like, I think it was Warrior 1 or Warrior 2. It's a warrior pose, but it's done in a bow. And he basically had put up a nice little Instagram video, like, where a comparison of, like, here's heel down, heel up, different things, and how you could take that pose and do it. So then I looked at it, I was like, okay, I know these poses, I know warrior. I was like, I want to see if I can go bow to bow. I want to see if I can go from over here and hit it, stay back chain and flow right through, and stay heels up the whole time. If I can keep my integrity, stay within the math. And then I want to see like, okay, how can I take it and try to show the mastery off by making something very difficult look very, very simple. And that's really the goal. Like a lot of the stuff that I do, or like that, I mean, even Anthony's this morning, you're doing looks really, really simple to a lot of people. And yeah, you're doing that's because you're doing it well. You know, sometimes the shaking, it makes its impact, but when you can make something look so fluid, the energy transfer looks so well and stay within the mathematics, if there's no wobble, there's just complete control. Yeah, that's mastery. That takes a lot of time. And that was a yoga thing that was totally inspired by BAM, because I remember watching it one day on Instagram, and I was about to go to the park, and I was like, fuck this, I'm going to try this. And it felt great. And then I was like, wow, that looks really good. I was like, I quite like this. And it had a subtleness to it, like a nice subtleness to it that you don't get with some of the just drilling go to movements. So if you just drill like a drop in, it's kind of, you know, but if you took that, you're taking your drop in, you're setting your bow, so like, boom, and you pull it back in, transfer your weight and everything. You can, like, the object was to totally look as fluid as possible while in control.
This is a great, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is a really good transition to another one of the questions that we had from one of our viewers. You're talking about this emphasis on intentionally flowing as smooth as possible, right? That's a really different mindset than just doing repetition-based movement in the gym. And we had a question from someone. So this is an esoteric question for Adrian, and I want to get into some more esoteric stuff too, because you talked about the chakras, and you know, this is a biomechanics podcast. So I might know what the chakras are from studying Eastern philosophy for 7 years, but some of our listeners might not know. So I'll ask you about that after. But esoteric question for Adrian when he's on next, and for you guys as well. Has concentrating on flowing movements carried over into other areas of life? For instance, do you find your conversations flow better, more flow in your problem solving and just general thinking? The flow in the podcast is really good, and I wonder if you've always been good at free flowing conversation, or if the flowing movement practice has helped with that. I know for me personally, I practice speaking a lot, and I've done a lot of podcasting, and I've done a lot of interview style, and I've done a lot of stuff in front of video, and I've done a lot of work as a musician and doing hip hop and rap and singer songwriter stuff. So my throat chakra has always been open. I've always been able to communicate, even if my movement is rigid. I've found that I've been able to be open enough in conversation for me to articulate my thoughts in a pretty fluid way. But I have definitely noticed a transference of more fluidity and just accepting the sort of situations in my life and being able to, quote, roll with the punches a little bit more. I have a more judo oriented approach to my life, which is kind of flowing with the problems as opposed to, like you said, fighting against them. But what do you guys think? What's your experience been with that? Has a more flow oriented movement practice affected your life in terms of how you interact with the world?
Go ahead, Adrian.
I have always been gifted with the gift of gab. I very much enjoy being center stage. For years, I did all the TV media stuff for Good Life Fitness, and I absolutely love it. I would get nervous like anyone else, but I would just look at it like an opportunity to share experience, to share inspiration with other people. Even if I got one person, it's like opportunity. I can go on TV, I can do this. And then I think learning how to communicate I have a wide array of clientele, different ages, genres, that learning how to communicate with all different sorts of people to solve problems, that probably opened me up more to listening than just speaking, because with the gift of gab also comes a motor mouth. I find I can talk a bit much. So as I've aged, I listen more. He's probably just saying this. If I have a couple friends watching this, they're literally going, yeah, right. I can think of a few would be like, I can think of a girl or two who would be like, he's full of shit. Like, he doesn't listen. And it's not necessarily that I love hearing myself speak, but when I do speak about things like that, it's what I know and it's what I enjoy and what I want to share. So I've been comfortable with it. As far as speaking with flow, I think now that I have calmed or risen above, or whatever analogy you want to look with it, some of the demons and some of the voices in my own head, it becomes a lot easier to speak controlled, calm, but still, dominant or assertive, of whatever it necessarily may be. There's like, I just rose above a lot of what was going on in my mind to actually listen to my higher self on how I felt about things. And it's good to acknowledge some of the other things in there, but like, acknowledge the shadow and acknowledge the doubt and the fears and what might be holding me back. But I just tend to phrase it a bit differently, like an opportunity when I'm speaking to possibly light somebody up, inspire them. And that takes basically all my fear away and gives me a power of courage. And it's kind of got me where I'm at. But I think I just literally, when I was like, I think for the last, like, what do we know, 2002? Yeah, probably about 10, 15 years ago, I started getting thrown on stage to present. And I just got hooked, like absolutely hooked. And then I started writing for magazines.
You lose them?
Yeah, it's just frozen there.
So I'll
Oh,
it's coming back.
Wait for it. Adrian, I think we just lost you there for a second.
Am I gone?
Oh, there you go. We're back.
We lost you for about 20 seconds.
Okay, holy cow, guys.
Yeah, we're back.
So yeah, I've always had the gift of gab. I've always kind of flown, and I don't really train it. I just talk like straight. Most of what you coming from me is straight from the heart.
Awesome. So my fluidity in like communication and with my body kind of happened in the opposite way. I was naturally gifted as a kid, moving my body. I was the faster kid and good at sports. But then, and I didn't talk very much. I'm not sure if that was because I grew up kind of isolated on a farm. I didn't have a lot of friends and blah, blah, blah. But basically, when I started bodybuilding, that's when I really got less of my body and more rigid, right? So I didn't really have that natural gift of gab. Plus, I made my body really rigid. And then it happened the opposite way, where I started reading a lot of philosophy and expanding my mind. This happened after school. And that's when I was able to free my body, because my mind kind of made me do it. I couldn't keep going with the heavy lifting. I couldn't keep going with the getting my nervous system amped up to the levels that are heightened, the highest highs, and keep that sustainable. My body wanted to start moving because my brain was telling it to, I think. So yeah, it was kind of an opposite experience to you guys.
Yeah, that's
I can understand that though.
It's funny because I had an almost similar experience in terms of not feeling like I could feel understood in my expression. The more that I read and the more technical my knowledge and the more nuanced my thoughts became, I felt like it was harder and harder to convey, or at least bring some of the high level thoughts down to the level that people were willing to listen and have conversation. So even though I was trying to articulate myself, my mind was operating at a different level that conversations were taking place. And so part of me felt like, it was like, am I just not articulate? Am I socially inept? Am I freaking autistic or something? Like, am I not able to connect with people? But I found that for me, it was, well, first finding the people who were willing and able to have some of the more nuanced conversations about topics that go above and beyond your day-to-day conversation. And then also developing the skill of having just bullshitting small talk, because not everyone is going to be able to have conversations at the level that my mind freely, thinks at 90% of the time. And that's, and that's just me. That's me personally, that's not necessarily saying that people are dumb or anything. Like, I'm definitely not saying that. I'm not, trying to say that. I'm just saying that most conversation that takes place between people is a little more casual than the levels of nuanced thought that you're going to start to develop when you spend, your year reading. Like you said, you spent 3 years, Will, reading 200 books a year. And I was probably close to the same. I've probably read, last year I read 250 books, which is kind of nuts. And
but most of them, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I heard someone talking about audio, like someone said audiobooks aren't real books, and another person said, well, that's really ableist because some people are ADHD and or visually impaired, and so however you take in your information, it's still reading. You're still ingesting or digesting information. We have so we're on No Filter Network. We have some live viewers, and on No Filter Network, if you've never been on. We record these episodes live, and viewers can actually ask questions in real time. They can either use the live chat or they can hit the knock button and they can actually join the stream themselves. So if you guys are watching and you want to join the conversation, you want to actually join the video stream, you can hit the knock button and request to join, and I can let you in. But someone just asked, people take issue with Goda's language. And I have noticed that as well. People think that because they're, you know, inventing terms, I think they're inventing terms to simplify the concepts and not make people get lost in sort of anatomical or kinesiological gobbledygook. But people still take issue with it because the sort of consensus language is still anatomical language or academic language, right? So he said, people are taking issue with the Goda language. Let's use the term bow. How can we help people understand what a bow is without necessarily using the word bow? Preliminary thoughts.
I don't necessarily have an issue with the word bow, because if, let's say, a chiropractor or physio or someone in the academic community was to cue that, they would use way more technical language than a bow. I love the shape of it. Literally looks like a bow. So I'm not in agreement with that. I think I really like the bow, and I think that the more it gets on social media, the more people show it, display it. It's clearly seen in slow motion. I love it personally. So I'm in disagreement there. What about you, Adrian? What do you think?
I like the simplicity of it. I definitely like the simplicity of it. I think that for coaches, it would be good to know how to bridge the two gaps. So like to communicate with the anatomical terms, I mean, it's completely possible, but I think in almost all cases, you'd be doing your clients a disservice using those terms. When you go see a specialist, they don't talk to you like they're talking to like one of their peers. They don't talk to you like they're talking to another specialist. They put it across like as if they're presenting it on TV to like a 6th grade mind, something that you can understand easily, and it simplifies a concept. If you spend a lot of time getting lost in those terms, you're spending a lot of time probably lost in a book, or you could be lost in an experience. And for, like I said, practitioners, it may be worthwhile to know how to bridge that gap so that everybody can communicate. But getting hung up over terminology rather than the experience and the understanding, that sounds like a self-imposed roadblock to me. It sounds like just trying to make an argument when you could be trying to understand. And it sounds like somebody hanging on to dogmatic. It almost sounds like a bit of a hater. Like, I mean, it just a tad. And I can understand, like, I'm not necessarily saying the person that asked that is a hater, but I think when people run back to those things, and you're not going to hear a Goda person say supination, pronation, except you're not going to hear those things. But I mean, like, most clients won't understand. Like I work with doctors, and they don't want me to fucking say, lie down supine, because they don't want to think like that when they work with me. They don't want to think. They want to experience. So lay down, face up. Okay, problem solved. You know, but like, think how many times you say someone like raise your right hand, they accidentally raise their left. Well, you know, like the simplification is really what it's all about. That's why you go, okay, I'm going to communicate this so that someone can hit this position and experience what it is. And then, you know, once you do a bow and you feel a bow and you see a bow, it really does make sense. It's not, I mean, look at my legs, it's bow. Look at this bow. This is a corner. This is like the corner, I think, is probably harder to understand actually than the bow. The bow, like for most people, they're probably going to think about like the IT band being stretched out like a bow. And that's not exactly it either, but that's probably people are gonna, and that's for those people who are gonna get that lateral quad bow rather than like a back chain kind of bow. You'll see it as people progress. You'll kind of see their bows change. I know myself, like, you know, I was definitely in that lateral quad IT band, but I wasn't doing the bow correct or as good as I do now. But I don't necessarily know why a practitioner would be so concerned about terminology that you're not going to use with your clientele. So if your mission is to help as many people as possible, simplification would be key.
Yeah. To your point about the whole it smells like a hater situation, I think people are going to have an issue with any aspect of Goda. They're basically, again, the critics of Goda that I find, they're not actually arguing against the principles. They're just nitpicking and looking for things to complain about, right? And so, you know, you get, like the language, that you're just inventing language. It's like, well, no, we're creating simple descriptive terms that are easier to understand than trying to break. Like, do you want me to describe every sort of function and angle at each joint and describe like what forces are being applied through the outer edge of my, like, it's like, no, just say a bow.
We'll go to
You know,
the
it's like,
different paradigm.
yeah,
I'd like that with citations too as well. I need to see the papers, the peer-reviewed citations.
you know,
You got to quote the good book, show me that in a book, show me.
You know, in terms of coaching cueing, I think you could describe, you know, like you'd help a person set a bow, and you can say, hey, notice that when your joint angles are in these positions, you're creating a bowing action and energy and loading on the outside of your leg, so you can almost visualize it like it's a bow. From now on, this sensation I'm going to refer to as a bow. Like, you could walk a person through the actual experiences of what's happening within the body, and then say, it's like, okay, this is the term we're going to use to describe this sort of action here, right? And like, maybe that could help simplify it. The person followed up by saying, the people that I come across who have issues with go-to language tend to be traditional lifters and strength and conditioning coaches. Hey, myself included, right? Like, I came from a CrossFit, powerlifting, gymnastics, strength and conditioning background, and I was like, the fuck are these guys talking about? I was pissed when I first saw it.
Everybody's using the same language, though, in terms of it all comes from anatomy, and it all comes from Latin language. And, you know, basically, this is a complete different paradigm. So the language has to be different than it was before. We're not describing linear patterns. We're describing circular rotary patterns. So it's good that the language changes. There is going to be some, beef between lifters, physios and people in the current paradigm. I think it's going to change broadly in, the years to come. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with the language at all, and I think it's just a matter of adopting a new, more simple language.
I saw this amazing interview with Tom Myers, and he was asked this question about Tom Myers is the one who sort of coined the term anatomy trains, and he would map these muscular meridians, these sort of fascial lines of tension along the body. And he was asked this question. It's like, well, what do you say to people who say that you're performing pseudoscience? And he said, well, here's the issue with that term, is that pseudoscience is assuming that what I'm doing is imitating science, and I'm not doing science in the conventional way. I'm making observations, and I'm making a map. I'm making a map of the human body. This isn't science. I'm looking at the body, and I'm making a map. and if it's like, if you don't like the map, then like, show me a better map. And I feel like GOTA, because they're defining first principles of locomotion, they're doing the exact same thing. They're making observations by watching slow motion video of the most durable populations, and they're creating a map of the locomotion patterns and the biomechanical patterns that human beings naturally observe when they're at their most secure and least secure, right? So they have a GOTA map and they have a WOTA map, but they're not claiming to do any scientific study. So every person who's like, oh, show me a study that proves your thing, it's like, it's just a map. These are consistencies within observations that we're making.
I don't even get why you need to go.
I wonder why that kind of criticism doesn't carry over with, say, martial arts or ballet, for example. They have like the tendu releve, first position, and arabesque. They have like you could probably say that's a jump with an external rotation and a supination and a hip extension, and like, holy crap, you could probably go out of your mind trying to write the most long-winded thing to show everybody how much you know while you waste everybody's time, and no ballet instructor would know what the fuck you were talking about. Why doesn't it bother anyone when someone says, yeah, releve, that doesn't get anyone, that's accepted. It's because it's older, or if you go do horse stance. Anybody in martial arts probably knows what horse stance is. They don't seem to rip down warrior pose in yoga. They don't seem to rip down that if you said sit bones, does that bother those people? Or is it just a problem with GOTA being new and them not understanding? And I can understand the searching, but why such a pessimistic or such a negative point of view?
Well, I think
you're coming from to come from that place is not a winning place. That's it. And the same way I'm going to use this word right now, that is a self-imposed roadblock. Obviously, it isn't a roadblock, but everybody knows what I fucking mean.
It's a great block. It's exactly what's needed in the in the context of the systems need to tell the truth. You know what I mean? Like, I think go to simplifying things into shapes, into like the descriptions are not difficult descriptions. They're descriptions of shapes and they're descriptions of what should happen as you move. Okay. And to me, that's massively simplifying things. You just have to learn a little bit of new language. So yeah, again, I don't see the issue with that at all. Right. And I think you don't have to go through the institution of science in order for something to be true. Okay. Like science itself and the scientific process are different from the scientific institutions. So who's to say that you need to go through a scientific institution in order for something to have a new language or in order for something to be true? Science belongs to everybody.
I saw an interesting point that when people say peer review, it's almost synonymous with like group consensus. It's like here's this group of people and they're creating a consensus. And so when you talk about a scientific institution, whether it's whether it's a university or something, it's like you have this sort of group think tank and they're reviewing each other and they create a group consensus themselves, but it doesn't mean that it's not open to scrutiny or further observation or further questioning. That's like sort of a starting point, right? And real science is just waiting for people to disprove each other, I think.
Absolutely. Peer review came in about 75 years ago. It wasn't a part of the scientific process before that. So the good part about that is that, yeah, you do get checked on your work. The bad part is that you can get groups of people who gatekeep information. And that's part of the process where I don't want to use that go-to language because it's outside that close-knit circle, right? That owns what the truth is at the current moment. It's like, who actually owns the truth? Can you have your own truth in movement that goes against the scientific institution view of movement? Absolutely you can, right? So yeah, I love that point, basically. It's like, yeah, new language is great if everyone can agree on it and it works better.
So I think we just lost Adrian. Either his phone died or he exited out. But guys, if you have any questions, people who are listening on Spotify and iTunes, we record these live on nofilter.net, where you can ask questions in a live chat. You can actually hit the knock button and you can join the conversation. So if you want to join on now, hit the knock button and we can have at least one or two viewers on to join in on the conversation, and we can have a chat. But some of the talking points that we went over today went really, I can't believe it's already been an hour, by the way. That's nuts to me. We got Adrian back. We good?
What is wrong with the audio? Gentlemen, the audio that I'm getting is crazy.
Is it? Do I sound like a dying robot?
Super bass, slow motion.
It's probably probably sometimes when you first sign on, there's a little bit of lag. And so if we give it just a few seconds to sort of sync up, or if your connection rejoins there, we should be okay. Our listeners are saying that they can hear perfectly on their end, which is thank you for letting us know that. Sometimes it's just a connection issue.
How are you now? Can you hear us now?
What is going on?
That's a no.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we got 4 people who are still hanging around with the live viewers. Anyone have any questions or any ideas that they wanted to kind of share, other than we covered the language issue that people have? Hopefully that was a little insightful. Again, I think it's just a matter of people being
back off and try this again.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you in a second here. We can hear you. Can you not hear us? Few minor technical issues. Sometimes when you do it on a phone, yeah, he'll be back. If anyone else wants to, yeah. So where were you on your thought?
We were talking about science and peer review versus just doing your own science. Like, can you have truth outside the scientific establishment consensus? And is that the paradigm change that's happening right now, overall, broadly, right? Like, in many industries, a lot of things are being gate kept because the groups at the top hold the monopolies on the information, basically, right? So now it's coming to the people. So I love it.
Well, I think, you know, the interesting thing about this idea of scientific institution and that being accepted as mainstream truth is you see that it like, is that a new paradigm? Well, I think that paradigm of people questioning scientific institution as absolute truth has always been around. And this exceeds beyond just mainstream information. You know, this is like, or sorry, mainstream fitness information. This is also like medical information. This is also nutrition information. Like people have looked at peer-reviewed medical research and said, actually, I think the way you designed this study is pretty myopic, and the fact that this is accepted as universal truth is absolutely ridiculous. People have, you know, someone said we got a WODA internet connection happening. That's really funny. Worst of all time internet connection.
That's great.
But you know, like, so you, okay, let's even, I hate to go here, but this is pertinent. Let's take the idea of vaccination, for example, where people are saying, well, vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, vaccines are going to prevent transmission, vaccines are doing this, and this. This is what scientific institutes have said. People are saying, okay, either absolutely trust that because we have governments and medical institutions and everyone, so they're saying they're safe. And then you have another broad group of people that are saying, actually, if we look at this data or we take these considerations, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Let's not trust, you know, the science meaning the institutions saying that things are safe or not safe. You know, what ended up happening in some cases is some people had really adverse reactions to the vaccines. I was double vaccinated and I still got COVID really bad. So it actually didn't stop me from getting sick. So it didn't work in the way that it was advertised to me in terms of its efficacy, right? And you know, being able to say, hey, I got these vaccines and they didn't work, like that's almost a taboo thing to say, because that then you're going against the science, because you're saying something is ineffective, right? This is a really, really good point that Efren in the comments just made. He said the argument that things cannot be true without peer-reviewed study, meta-analysis, etc., is so sad. Everything ends up being anecdotal at some point, because even the interpretations of a study outcome is still the perspective of a person, sometimes multiple people, when you get down to the level of peer review, right? So when you're making observations about reality, and you know, you like, studies are just observations about reality. They're thoroughly tested observations about reality. They are meticulously observed, you know, in different capacities, and the variables are limited in a certain perspective. But one of the, you know, and I'm reading and consuming a lot of Tom Meyer's content right now, so I'm quoting him a lot. But he made this point that, you know, some of the issues with how we study movement and fitness is it's either too specific or it's too broad. So, for example, you get a study that shows the muscular contractile force of a quadricep during knee extension under the conditions of 35-year-old physically fit men with no pre-existing health conditions doing a leg extension over 8 weeks. And you're testing this, and the variables are so isolated that it can't possibly give you any insight into the biomechanics or the way that the human body works in concert with itself. It's so isolated and it's so removed. The other thing is, like, maybe you're like observing things that are so broad and so universal and so nebulous that they can't give you specific information that is meaningful. And so you have the, and now what I like about the observational method that Goda took is they took this broad category, but they found specific consistencies among thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of slow motion video. So they're observing consistent, like, it's statistically significant if you see this thing over and over and over again, and you can't find incidences of a person, you know, getting like an ACL like a non-contact catastrophic injury in these patterns. Like, you can't find a single slow motion video of it, but you can find thousands of slow motion videos of people you know, like demonstrating the same patterns as they get injured. Then that's statistically significant. They're taking broad and specific and they're synthesizing it to one. It's a perfectly valid form of making your, or like coming up with hypotheses or propositions, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think the questions really come down to this, like back to what you were saying before. It's, do you trust that the system will give you the right answer? Okay, like, do you trust that every time? And can you enforce that? Can you enforce trust in the system on somebody? And in my mind, you can't, right? You can try, but the human will, for someone who wants to think independently, is going to bite back at that. And that's what you're seeing now broadly through many systems. It's not just, it's manifesting with a blockade, okay, but it's all over the place. In every system, there is gatekeepers that have believed for a long time that they hold the information of the system, and that's breaking down because people can share information so much faster. For me, I trusted the academic system as I came up. Everything that I learned, whether it was nutrition, whether it was DNA, like throughout university and Cairo school, I believed to be getting the best information. When I left school, I realized a lot of the information I got was not the best information. And I trusted that that was the case. Okay. So in my own life experience, I have seen systems that I trusted lead me the wrong direction. And now you want to mandate or force that I trust something that has broke my trust. It makes no sense in my own like experience. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
I have
I
never
can
been
hear
the
you.
trusting type. So
Your question.
when it came to going to certifications, I was just kind of sat there and immediately questioned everything that was being said, especially when it came with like a nice, say, snake oil pitch. I would try to find, I would look at it and I'd try to find some sort of flaw or try to find some sort of smoke and mirror that they were covering up. And a lot of questions and a lot of situations like that, I always ask myself, who benefits? And that generally will lead you to the right answer. Follow the money.
Yeah, I think
I know people love to feel safe. They like to feel predictable. I don't. In fitness right now, the word sustainable is a buzzword that I just don't like because it operates from a place of fear. People try to sell it as, oh, this is sustainable. They want to cater to your desire for predictability and control in a completely unpredictable, uncontrollable world. I mean, that's shown. Like double, triple backed, new variant, doesn't matter. That becomes cyclical. And I also am one of those heal yourself individuals. So that might tell a little bit of where I'm coming from. If something makes someone feel safe, by all means do. But I don't feel good about sleeping with a nightlight because someone else is afraid of the dark. And I know that really simplifies it. And that really makes some people angry. That's their problem, not mine. They have some soul searching they got to do. To tell me I have to put something in my body, I could walk down and say, I feel a lot safer with your thumb up your ass right now. And you won't do it. Why is that? You don't want to. Oh, there's a study telling you that thumb up your bum is going to do this. It's going to stop anybody else from putting their thumb in your bum. So what? I sympathize and I simplify, but at the same point in time, like mandating that sort of thing on someone, I'm one of those freedom dudes. I'm one of those pro-choice dudes.
Yeah, and I mean, all three of us are Canadian, right?
It's probably one of the saddest things that's happened in the last world. What's that?
I said all three of us are Canadians, and that's been like a big, we're sort of a country right now that's sort of a symbol for people not really being keen for governments overstepping and a lot, forcing us to make medical decisions on our behalf. And with the trucker rallies that are happening, and a lot of it's very, very interesting to see that level of conversation opening up. For me personally, it's like, again, I got vaccinated because my partner is a first responder, and she and I had a very long conversation where she asked me to do it for, because she really believed in it and she really wanted to feel safe and she didn't want to put her other first responder people at risk. And then, we both got COVID and she was like, well, sorry, I made you do that kind of thing. But, it kind of is what it is. Right. Without getting too deep into COVID, and unfortunately I have to wrap up in the next 5 minutes just because I have to jump back on to work here. But I just wanted to thank you guys for jumping on for, again, a second round. For everyone who is watching live and was asking questions, thank you for participating in today's conversation. If you ever want to actually join the stream yourself, nofilter.net is pretty cool in that you can hit the knock button and you can actually join the stream and be part of the podcast yourself. And we're always willing to let people do that and be part of the conversation. Adrian, this was an awesome second episode to have you on. I feel like an hour and a half flew by and we barely got to scratch the surface of some of the stuff that I really wanted to talk to you guys about today. But we'll definitely have you on for another episode. I can see you being a regular guest in terms of the roundtable conversation, because again, here we are, three dudes who spent a ton of time lifting weights and are all obsessed with GOATA and freedom of movement and such a radical perspective shift that we have all gone through. I think it's really cool to just be able to have these open conversations. So thank you again for joining us, man. This is episode 31 of The Art of Move. For anyone who is listening on iTunes and Spotify, go to nofilter.net if you want to see the video replay of this, or if you want to see any of the upcoming live streams that you can be a part of yourself.
Have a good one, guys.